Imagine a secret meeting happening right now, behind closed doors in a fortified government building in Baghdad's international zone. A meeting that isn't about oil, or war, or political alliances, but about a single line of computer code that could fundamentally rewrite the global financial hierarchy and unlock a tidal wave of wealth so immense it would make the entire cryptocurrency boom look like a mere footnote in economic history. This is the reality of the project to delete the electronic platform that has for years acted as a chokehold on the Iraqi dinar's true potential, a platform operated not by Iraq but by the Federal Reserve Bank of New York, a constant reminder of a lack of monetary sovereignty that the Central Bank of Iraq is now aggressively and systematically dismantling in a series of moves that have gone almost entirely unreported by the mainstream financial media, which is precisely why you are hearing about it here first, because while the world is distracted by the daily noise of stock tickers and inflation reports, a quiet revolution is taking place in the heart of the Middle East, a revolution centered around a currency that many have written off as a lost cause but which is now, for the first time in decades, showing the genuine, tangible, and data-driven signs of a nation preparing for a profound economic recalibration. The Iraqi dinar is not merely a piece of paper, it is a symbol of a nation's resilience, a token of its untapped potential, and a direct IOU from a country sitting on one of the largest proven oil reserves on the planet. And the recent news, the real news that the gurus are trying to interpret and the skeptics are trying to ignore, points to a convergence of factors that is impossible to dismiss. The passing of the landmark 3-year budget by the Iraqi Council of Representatives, a budget that moves beyond mere survival and into the realm of ambitious national development, funded by oil revenues that are now being managed with a newfound, albeit fragile, fiscal responsibility, the relentless and publicly stated drive by the Central Bank of Iraq to stabilize the exchange rate and, crucially, to unify the official rate with the market rate, a goal that cannot be achieved without first liberating the currency from the external controls that have dictated its value for so long. This isn't speculation, this is public policy, articulated in official statements and press releases from the bank itself, a body that is now operating with a level of technical expertise and independence that it has lacked for generations. The process is complex, messy, and fraught with political interference and corruption. That much is undeniable, but the direction of travel is now unmistakable. Iraq is moving, step by deliberate step, towards economic normalization, and the revaluation of its currency is not a magical event that will happen in a vacuum. It is the inevitable endpoint of this normalization process, a process that includes weaning the domestic economy off its dependency on the US dollar for internal transactions, a Herculean task that involves convincing a skeptical population to trust their own currency for savings and large purchases, a task that the government is pursuing through a combination of coercion, by restricting dollar auctions and cracking down on black market exchanges, and incentivization, by promoting electronic payment systems and digital banking, all with the ultimate goal of creating a self-sustaining, closed-loop monetary system where the dinar is not just a medium of exchange for buying bread but a legitimate store of value for building future wealth. Think about what that means for a moment. A nation of over 40 million people, with a median age of just over 20 years, a demographic goldmine of young, ambitious, and increasingly connected individuals, suddenly conducting all of their economic activity, from buying a car to purchasing a home, in their own national currency. A currency that is no longer artificially suppressed by an external mechanism but is instead finding its true value based on the immense underlying assets of the nation. Primarily its oil and gas wealth, but also its vast agricultural potential and its strategic location as a future trade corridor between East and West. This is the foundational shift that is occurring right now, and it is a shift that is being deliberately engineered by a new generation of Iraqi economists and technocrats who have studied in the West and understand precisely what is required to join the club of stable, internationally recognized economies. They are not just hoping for a revaluation, they are building the economic infrastructure that would make a revaluation not only possible but sustainable, because a sudden, arbitrary increase in the exchange rate without this foundation would be catastrophic, leading to hyperinflation and economic chaos, a fact that the Central Bank of Iraq is acutely aware of, which is why their public statements always emphasize stability and gradual improvement over overnight miracles. The real guru news, therefore, is not in a rumor about a specific date, but in the dry, technical reports about the number of Iraqi banks now connected to the international SWIFT system for euro transactions, or the successful issuance of a sovereign bond, or the slow but steady increase in the country's foreign currency reserves, which act as a war chest to defend any future exchange rate. This is the boring, unsexy, but critically important work that forms the bedrock of any potential change, and it is happening now, away from the spotlight, which is why you must stay informed on these specific developments and not get distracted by the hype. To truly understand the trajectory of the Iraqi dinar, you need to follow the data, not the drama, and that data is pointing towards a future that is fundamentally different from the past. Now, let's cut through the noise and anchor this discussion in the most critical and misunderstood element of this entire situation, the monumental, multi-trillion-dollar project that isn't being built with bricks and mortar but with international treaties and financial agreements. A project that goes far beyond the borders of Iraq and taps directly into the greatest economic shift of our generation, the global move away from the US dollar as the world's sole reserve currency. What you are witnessing with the Iraqi dinar is not an isolated event. It is a single, crucial chess move in a much larger geopolitical game, a game where the board is the global financial system and the players are the world's economic superpowers. Iraq, whether by strategic choice or sheer necessity of its geographical location, is finding itself at the crossroads of this new economic world order, courted by both the East and the West, and its currency is the key that unlocks its participation. The recent landmark agreement between Iraq and the International Monetary Fund, often misrepresented by guru headlines, is not a direct signal for an imminent revaluation. Rather, it is a structured program of economic reforms, a stern but necessary prescription for the country's financial health that includes painful measures like reducing massive public sector wages and cutting inefficient subsidies, but it also includes the crucial, non-negotiable requirement to strengthen the independence and credibility of the Central Bank of Iraq and to implement a clear, transparent, and market-based exchange rate policy. This is the real guru news that matters. The IMF is effectively acting as a financial coach, forcing Iraq to get its monetary house in order as a prerequisite for deeper integration into the global economy, and this integration is the entire ballgame. Furthermore, look east to Iraq's deepening strategic partnership with China, a relationship cemented by the massive oil for reconstruction deal, which sees Chinese companies rebuilding Iraqi infrastructure in exchange for a steady, long-term supply of crude oil. This deal is significant not just for the infrastructure it builds but for the currency in which it is increasingly being settled, the Chinese yuan. This is a deliberate and calculated step in the de-dollarization of the Iraqi economy, reducing its vulnerability to US sanctions and Washington's political whims, and diversifying its foreign currency holdings. Every barrel of oil sold to China for yuan instead of dollars is a small but powerful vote of no confidence in the old financial order and a step towards a multipolar currency world. In this new world, a country like Iraq, with its vast resources, is no longer a passive participant but an active player with leverage. Its need for a strong, internationally recognized currency is no longer just about domestic stability, it is about negotiating power. When Iraq sits down at the table with international oil giants like ExxonMobil or Shell, or with construction behemoths from South Korea or Germany, the strength of its currency directly impacts the terms of those multi-billion-dollar contracts. A weak dinar means Iraq gets less for its oil and pays more for its imports, a brutal form of financial colonialism that has plagued the nation for decades. A strong, stable dinar, however, flips the script entirely. It allows Iraq to demand better terms, to retain more of its wealth, and to finance its own reconstruction without sinking into a bottomless pit of debt. This is the real economic liberation that the government in Baghdad is seeking, and it is a goal that aligns perfectly with the interests of the Iraqi people and, potentially, with the interests of those holding the currency. The recent crackdowns on corrupt currency exchanges and the money laundering networks that have bled the country dry are not isolated law enforcement actions. They are a direct assault on the internal enemies of this monetary sovereignty, clearing the swamp so that a new, robust financial system can be built. The process is ugly and often violent, but it is a necessary purge. The path forward is not a straight line, it is a treacherous climb out of a deep canyon, with setbacks like political infighting and external pressure from regional powers trying to maintain their influence. But the destination is clear, a sovereign Iraq with a sovereign currency, capable of representing the true value of its nation on the global stage. This is the profound context that is almost always missing from the daily chatter, the grand narrative that gives meaning to every minor fluctuation in the exchange rate and every dry central bank report. So, where does this leave you, the individual watching this grand geopolitical and economic drama unfold from the outside, potentially holding a stack of dinars or considering it, with your own financial future hanging in the balance of these distant decisions? This is the moment we move from theory to practical reality, from analyzing central bank policies to confronting the raw, unfiltered psychological and strategic challenge of navigating an investment landscape that is uniquely opaque, volatile, and emotionally charged. The greatest risk you face right now is not that the revaluation will never happen. The greatest risk is that you will become a casualty of the information war that rages around this currency, succumbing either to the euphoric hype that blinds you to very real obstacles or to the paralyzing cynicism that causes you to miss the genuine, historic opportunity that is being built piece by piece in front of our eyes. Your success or failure will be determined not by a government decree from Baghdad, but by your own mental discipline, your source of information, and your strategic patience. Let's be brutally honest, the path to a significant, sustainable increase in the dinar's value is still littered with massive roadblocks: the deeply entrenched corruption that siphons billions away from the national treasury, the persistent political gridlock that can halt progress for months, the ever-present threat of regional conflict